Welcome, listeners. I'm so excited to have you get to know Meghan Freed. She's an attorney who's here with me today, and I'm actually going to be getting to know Meghan as all my listeners do. But what I do know, Meghan, well, I know you're an amazing woman. I mean, you've got a lot of background. You're an attorney like me.
I sure am.
Who's doing some alternative dispute things.
We are, yes.
So I can't wait to hear about that. But Meghan, what I always like to start with is my guests always have these stories about how they got to where they are. How did you end up working in this area of law and then changing it a little bit to a more of a peaceful practice?
Yeah. So I went to law school, and before I went to law school, I had different jobs, but most significantly in financial services. And the way I like to start that out is when I talk about the practice I had at the beginning of my career and I bring you to what I do now, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So I started doing financial litigation. So big numbers, big dollars, big companies. And I did that for years. And then I went and represented one company, was the lawyer for one company. And that was great. I saw a lot of the United States, and then we decided to open our own law firm. And that was with my partner, the Marcroft of Freed Marcroft, is actually my wife. So we got married in 2012, which is when she graduated from law school. And I'd been practicing for a long time doing the big litigation stuff. And we ended up deciding to open our own practice because we wanted a different sort of lifestyle, really, is what it came down to. I wanted to get off the road a little bit or really spend my time on the road doing it for leisure and travel, not for work. Yeah. And then what ended up happening as we started our practice is we discovered that what really resonated with us was the work that we were doing, helping individuals and families with family law matters. And the connection I would draw is I really liked big, sophisticated, complicated financial litigation. But the impact that it had to my clients, even though the numbers was huge, was proportionately smaller than the impact that what we do for people's lives in the divorce and family law context has on our clients' lives.
Yeah.
And so we just felt like we really made a bigger difference, that it wasn't just intellectually interesting, but it was personally interesting. It was being the part of, instead of being part of a corporation's net gain or loss, we were part at its very finest expression of someone's transformation of their own life, right? So that is why family law.
Okay, so I love you already because it's so interesting how this happens too. Because I have a business coach that I work with, and I always have this goal, this financial goal, and I was doing these exercises and kind of meditating on things, and suddenly, just a couple of days ago, it was like whammo, that's not what's driving me. I'm not going to do my goals on the finances anymore. It's on how many people can I serve. So just like you, that is the thing. I mean, couldn't you just cry? The people that you can help, and especially when we can help them divorce a different way with kindness, designing their own divorce. Oh, I love that. I love that for the kids. I love it for their integrity. I love it for their future, for, becoming better people so they can have better relationships. So you're speaking my language. I love that you did that. So ever since then, you've been working in the world of family law?
That's right. So we transitioned from more of a general civil practice in about 2014 over to just family law. And I'll actually, what you were saying about your business coach resonated with me on two fronts. The first is that our business coach that we started working with in 2014 was the first one that said, you got to pick one thing and you got to lean all the way in so that you can be the very best at this one thing. an inch wide, a mile deep instead of a mile wide,
Right.
right?
Right.
So credit to the good coaches out there for sure.
Mhm.
The other thing is that one of the things that my wife Kristen and I realized, especially since we're married, is that when we were a smaller law firm and with just the two of us as lawyers, we couldn't serve as many people as we wanted to. And so that was also the motivation for growing our firm, right?
Yeah.
Like you, financial goals and being able to take time off for the vacations you want,
Right.
they certainly help, but they only get you so far, right? It
Mhm.
really has to become something bigger, a bigger personal mission of what you're trying to do. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
hear
and
you.
I so agree, and so you're growing your firm.
Mm.
What I'm doing is I'm reaching more people through online courses.
Which I love. I love that you do them. When I saw them on your website, I was like, oh, I've got, you're going to see me as enrolled in one so that I can.
It's a great tool, and the one is for Minnesota clients only. That's the divorce paperwork.
Mm,
But I love it, and I love that my clients have that option. If for
yeah,
one, I don't have time to take on a new client, or two, they want to spend a little bit less, do it themselves a little bit more, so I'm able to impact more. But that parenting plan that I have goes all over the US.
so
Anyone
cool.
can use that. So I'm so excited about that. And I'm excited because I want to help people. And the kids are always kind of a driver for me.
Mm,
Let's do this the right way so that they can be resilient and do well through a divorce, just because I've seen that and I've seen people fighting over them, and it's so hard to keep your head on straight when you're going through a hard thing like divorce. So yeah, I love reaching out to more people. So your firm, is it huge? Is it a big huge?
it's I'm going to give you the Connecticut answer. It's big for family law only in Connecticut. There are about 20 of us total. About 10 of us are lawyers. So that's sort of the size of the firm, which is a little bit unusual where we are. It's certainly on the
Mhm.
bigger side, for us. But yeah, that's where we are right now.
Okay, so tell me, so you talk about really zooming in on what you're going to do. I only do mediations. I
I know
don't
you're
have
even more niched.
I know, I am. Spread a little bit on the parenting, co-parenting piece a little bit. Tell me about your firm in Connecticut. Are you doing divorces the regular way? Like sometimes, and because sometimes that is necessary where someone needs a good fight, some representation, advice.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a great question. It's something I love to talk about. So for us, we practice in Connecticut. There are three main modalities of divorce. There's like what you'd call the traditional litigated divorce,
Yep.
which I like to break up into subparts because there are very different litigated divorces. There's the worst case scenario, War of the Roses,
Yep.
right, where we can't reach any agreements outside of court, and then there's another litigated process where there are agreements being reached, but
Yep.
we're outside of court. Um, but then we have collaborative law, which we
Mhm.
also practice and is a great option for some people. And then we have our mediation practice. And the reason we practice all three is in order to be able to serve clients with whatever,
Right.
whatever options are available to them. Um, in Connecticut, we don't have the version of mediation that is required like in some states where you
Mhm.
go to mediation as part of
Mhm.
your litigated divorce. It's really an option and generally used as an approach to the divorce itself. And it takes two, right? So like a collaborative divorce, a mediation takes both people
Yes.
agreeing to opt into it. And even though we often have clients who are interested in it themselves, if their spouse doesn't come around to it, we just give them the best litigated divorce we can.
Yep. And that's where, I kind of become that gatekeeper with my consultation, getting to know the clients, talking about, I work closely with the collaborative law group
Yeah.
here too. And, explaining that route, explaining, you have to be able to work together. You have to be honest and truthful so that if anyone's a little bit
Up
concerned,
front.
yes. So, and I have been so blessed because the people who have found me are amazing people who want to work together. Now, they're not all like that. When I do some of my volunteer work or, I'm at the counties, that's a little bit different. It's still the same though. And if you can explain to people how beneficial it is for the two of them to come up with an agreement together, to design it themselves, they generally work a little bit harder than having someone else do it. But
There's a big educational component to it. There really is. And I think one of the things about mediation specifically, and I don't know if you hear this too. I think sometimes people come to it driven only by the thought that it's the lowest cost alternative. And although that can be true, it's not always true, right? Although that can be true, it misses some of the really amazing parts of mediation. You mentioned you mentioned what it's like for the children during the divorce and what it's like for everyone looking back on the divorce. You mentioned that the control that the two parties retain rather than like putting it in front of a stranger and rolling the dice.
yes.
Another thing though is the privacy of a mediation.
Yes.
And that we can deliver really, really sophisticated mediations with very complex financials. See, I'm going back to financials again, right?
Yes.
Really complex financials or really complicated parenting structures, like where two parents live a sizable distance from each other. We've had some folks even with international components mediate, or things such as people with unpredictable schedules, ER doctors who really can't know when they're going to work until a day-to-day or week-to-week schedule. So a mediation can handle all of these really sophisticated components. And I think sometimes what happens is that people with more complex sets of circumstances think that mediation is just a lower cost alternative, and it misses picking up people who could really be great mediation candidates if we could get them educated on what it can really do.
Yeah, I agree. I thank you for saying that, because I'm going to try to grab that clip and send it over the internet, because that is so true. It's just, there's so many things about mediation that if people only knew, if they could understand that they actually could do it that way. And a lot of times they don't. So I just say, ask, do a consultation, find out if it can work for you, because truly, like you're saying, you can be creative in designing things how you want them. And I've had a lot of those tricky schedules, whether it's working nights or with parents living apart. But if both the parents care about their kids and want to do what's right, it's amazing. It's so funny. I find so much satisfaction, and people are like, how can you like doing divorces and mediation? But it's you get to be creative and do a greater good and help people. And it's just so beautiful.
I know. And I think divorce gets a bad rap, right? It's sort of like, it's a thing that people try to avoid. And I always try to draw a distinction between the different definitions of divorce. There's a divorce, like the process of becoming unmarried, of leaving an unhappy relationship, right? And then there's the thing itself, like the name we put on it, going through a divorce. I'm going to mediate my divorce, like the process rather than the life change. And the life change can be incredibly transformative.
Yes.
And I think that's
opportunity.
It is an opportunity. And that's true for both, right? The leaning in spouse, the person who wants to stay in the relationship and the leaning out spouse, it's not just transformative for the person that made the decision to end the marriage. It can be really transformative for the person who didn't decide it. And in fact, when I think back on Freed Marcroft's, like, wow, this person just blew my mind with how their life unlocked, right? Often it's not the person whose decision it was, which is just like, it's just amazing.
I know, and that is always a hard position to be in when you're the
Oh,
one
for
who
sure.
doesn't wanna go. And I mean, I applaud those couples who can go through and work through mediation, because even though they don't want it, they know that if they're gonna go through it, it's the best way to do it for their situation.
Right. And this is about acknowledging the reality of what's happening, right? We often talk about how we can't control other people's decisions or actions or the world around us, but we're 100% in control of our responses to them. So I think what's so impressive about those folks is that they took a set of circumstances that they wouldn't have chose it, and they made their own decisions about who and how they were going to be in it.
You're speaking my language. You can respond and not react,
Right.
right? Yeah, that's such an amazing that's an amazing point that you're making, and it's part of what I do. It's what I give my clients that they don't know they need.
Right.
So, when they sign on with me, I'll send them a video about, your mindset and the
Mhm.
circumstances and the thoughts and the feelings behind it, and how you can, either act intentionally or be reactive, because I want them to be prepared when they're coming into the session. So they get a little bit of that to maybe help them with future relationships and just a
Right.
little bit of self growth, because that's another thing. I mean, and it sounds like you're coached. I mean, these are things, I'm a lifelong learner, and
For sure.
everything I
Me too.
learn, I want people to suffer less, even through divorce. So, whatever I can do to get their mindset right, like you said. And Meghan, don't you almost wish, as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be fun to contact people from years ago that you knew didn't want the divorce? Because so many of them go, oh, I'm so glad I did it. It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
As it turns out, I wasn't happy. Right. And that doesn't always,
Yes.
we're not always still working with them when they figure that out. Sometimes it's way, it's further down the line, but for sure, I think that that's so true. And I think another thing that can be really powerful about mediation is that when someone feels out of control, right, and they're working on responding, not reacting. I love
Yeah.
that, by the way. And I think mediation is a way to regain some control, not just about outcomes, right? How our parenting plan gets structured, how property gets divided, but also on timeline, right? How long this takes,
Yeah.
what we do in between sessions. I think when people are feeling a loss of control in so many parts of their lives, we can give it back through mediation and collaborative law in ways that we simply can't when we are relying on a court, not just to make decisions, but to set dates,
Right.
or we're relying on your spouse's counsel to respond, or, you know, they're just, as you add more actors into it,
Yeah.
there are more people making their own decisions. And if you can tighten it up with mediation and hold that space for each other, you can really make progress aligned with your goals, whether that's speed or whether that's timing, or I mean, that people have a lot of different approaches, but like you say, we design it for the two of you.
Okay. I told you I was going to learn something. This is so interesting. This is all I do. It's all I talk about. I'm passionate about it. I never saw that benefit. I never thought of that benefit. So that's coming
Awesome.
down. But that is so true. They are in control. We
Yep.
set up the meetings. Such an amazing point. Okay, I have to ask you one more question, because it's just
Okay.
like sitting in my head. What is it like to be in a law practice with your spouse?
Oh, remember, it's divorce law practice with your spouse, right?
Right.
It's it's great. Um, it is. I can't. I worked for 10, 15 years of my career without being in a partnership with my spouse. And now I can't imagine what that was like. I mean, all of the things that are momentous, both on the good side and the bad side, we share.
Yeah.
Even little things like, and I'm not saying it's for everyone, right? But even little things like, have you ever had the experience of trying to explain your day to someone who wasn't there?
Megan, that's all I'm thinking of. That's all I'm thinking of is my husband and we've been married 31 years. We're like grandparents and he's got a big job and I think my thing's big and we come
Yeah, it
together
is
and
big.
we, support each other. We want to be there for each other, but I'm not going to understand. I mean, he starts talking about things that are going over my head and he's looking like a deer in headlights and I can only imagine how wonderful that can be. And so I'm hoping that when he retires, I can get him to do a little bit with with
Love
me.
it. Right. No, it's so wonderful. Like, you don't have that, gosh, where do I start feeling? The flip side of it, of course, is that you have to like, oh, okay, right? We have to transition into after work from during work. Last night I made the mistake of I got excited because there was a phone call that was, from someone that I was interested in because I think he can help our clients. And so my phone rang and it was like, oh my gosh, probably 7:30 and we had a longer day. And Christian just yelled 8. Okay, so 8. He called at 8 and I picked up the phone all excited that he called and she was like, Megan,
Yeah.
wait, we don't this can wait until tomorrow. So that's the other piece of it. I need to follow my own advice.
Yeah, I so agree. And that is, I mean, I have a problem with answering clients at any time of the day. And I can't help it. I love my work, right? I'm so into it. I want to be into it. I don't ever really want to be disconnected, but you are absolutely right. We do need to at some
Right.
point for our little brains to relax and to spend some time not thinking about it. So that would be something I would have huge issues with if I worked with him. I'd be so darn excited I wouldn't stop laughing. Now at least we have that he doesn't really know what I'm talking about. So
Right.
Megan, okay, I can't believe how fast the time has gone.
Yeah, this was really fun.
Oh my gosh, so enjoyed chatting with you. And I feel like this is just really, giving some good information about how powerful mediation is. It's not the only option. There's the other three, the traditional, the collaborative, and the mediation. And I know that traditional can be broken down in different ways, but I'm so passionate about mediation. It sounds like you are too, even though you
I
do.
am.
Yeah, the whole. So I so appreciate having you. And as you know, I'm sitting in my barn with my horse and donkey behind me. So when we start winding down, it's called the saddle up segment. And I always ask my guests for one piece of information or something that my listeners could do or learn from right now. Do you have something? I mean, you've
I,
given us so much, but.
I do. I do. I think one of the things that I've realized, particularly in the last, I'm going to call it in the post-pandemic period, is that it's very important for people to have an accurate assessment of the reality of their goals. Here's what I mean by that. I mean, if you are hoping that you can relocate to somewhere that is far away from your spouse, or when there are children, or you're hoping that you can leave your job to become a stay-at-home parent as part of the divorce process. Things that you and I know are might be possible with the agreement of both people, but if that you're not able to reach an agreement, a court probably isn't going to lean that right
Right.
way, right? And I think what I knew that it was important for you to know the truth. But what I've realized is that knowing the truth also gives people a way to move closer to their vision, even though they can't have the full expression of it. So, for example, say say that it's the I wanted to move away from my spouse with my children, and my spouse doesn't agree. Okay, so what am I going to do? Well, maybe I'm going to spend vacations there. Maybe I'm going to target moving there when my youngest child goes to college, right? How do I think about reality in a way that isn't depriving me of my village, but gets me as close as I possibly can? I think the truth isn't just powerful because it allows you to make decisions in line with reality, but it's also powerful because it gives you a way to move closer to your reality.
Yeah. Amen. And as you're saying that, that's why it's so important to be doing the work with someone who can give you legal information.
Oh, for sure.
Even if it's not legal, not legal advice always, but if you can get that legal information, it's so, so important.
You know what? That's interesting. I want to thank you for saying that, because I was very careful when I said that it was all things a mediator could tell you, right? So
Yes.
a lawyer mediator can't give you legal advice, but that they can give you legal information, like, I don't see a judge ordering this. Things
Or
like
this
that.
is what the law says.
Says, right,
And
right.
that often is enough to clarify it in people's minds. And that's why
Yeah.
I sometimes call on attorneys to come in and, hey, can you give a little advice on spousal
Yeah.
maintenance for this client?
Super great tool for mediation is
Yeah.
having people have their own independent actual lawyer
Yeah.
who can give them that legal advice, but who also respects the mediation process
Right.
and their client's desire to finish it and supports the process.
Amen. That's so important too, because I've had it the other way where they're not understanding and it dragged things out a lot longer. So true. So that we love those collaborative law attorneys because
We
they
love
get
them.
it. Yep, we get
Yeah.
it. They're wanting to work together, and I love working with them. So, Meghan, if people want to get a hold of you or find you, where can they?
Yes. So we are basically everywhere except TikTok, because it still scares us too much.
I've actually done a couple.
I want to be brave enough. But so far, everywhere else, it's Freed, Freed, like my last name, and Marcroft, Marcro, F as in Frank, T as in Tom.com. That's my wife's last name.
All right. And we will have that information in our show notes too, if listeners need that. So, Meghan, it has been delightful to get to know you. I appreciate your time so much. I appreciate everything you shared and all that I learned. So, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. And I can't wait to learn more from you, because I think that we have a thing now.
Yeah, I think that we do. So now we have a connection. So maybe we'll even have you back.
I love it.
All
Thank you
right.
so
Take
much.
care, Meghan.
Bye-bye.